I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on GBM, we're diving into one of the most compelling biblical books of the year. The name of the book, Is That Really in the Bible? It's written by a terrific author. His name is Cletus McMurtry. And in the book, he explores scripture through a unique lens, one that strips away religious dogma and leans into logic and life experience, as well as, of course, divine insight. A former Vietnam helicopter gunship pilot turned best-selling author, this writer challenges readers to see the Bible as more than just a religious text, but as a practical, truth-filled guide to life itself. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on GBN. We thank the folks at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him on TV today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Cletus, Melanie, thank you both for joining us here today on GBN.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, yes.
Now, I understand this was a collaboration. You're the actual author, Cletus, but Melanie made sure it was done right? Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, she edited. I'm not much of a writer. I kind of write what comes into my head, and then sometimes I get a little bit emotional. Maybe I can't write. So anyhow, she helps me keep on track.
Well, that's wonderful. I mean, I think having strong emotions, strong opinions, strong feelings are very, very good. I think it's at the heart of writing. And having Melanie there as an editor, someone to look at what you're writing and say, well, maybe it's better this way or that way, I think that's enormously helpful. And it's reflected within the pages of your book because it's a terrific job. Let me ask you this. Is that really in the Bible? What are you talking about there? I'm going to ask Cletus to answer that, and then I'll have Melanie take a shot at it. Is that really in the Bible? Give me an example of something that's in the Bible that folks wouldn't normally expect to be in the Bible.
Okay, actually, it's not in the Bible. Take the tithe. That's one of the first things I started looking and digging into. If you ask most pastors or religious leaders, what is a tithe? And they'll tell you usually it's 10% of your annual income or your monthly income. And yet, when you read different, I've got about 8 or 10 Bibles, and they're not all the same. There was one primary Bible at one time, the King James Version, that was, I believe, printed in 1611. Since then, starting about 1949, today we have over 129 versions. Most of those versions, well, let me tell you what it does. In Deuteronomy, and this is something interesting, anytime I ask about where do I find the information on tithing in the Bible, I never got a straight answer. Just
from the pastors.
From the pastors or anybody who says, yes, I know the Bible. So I started the research. And I found that in the King James, it starts out, again, it's in Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 22 through verse 29. They only give you the first 22. Thou shalt surely tithe the portion of the, and now in the King James, it says, will surely tithe the increase of the portion of in
your
this
annual
case,
harvest.
Your annual harvest from year to year. So if you start the first year, you don't have an increase. You just have the baseline. And the second year, if you had more of seed from the field or wine or whatever, that increase is what you give 10% of. Does not say to give 10% of your total income. A lot of the Bibles have changed, and they've taken the word increase out. And now people think that they have to give 10% of their whole income, and that's not what God wanted. I have one of the Bibles I like to, or books I like to use, is this Guidepost Parallel Bible. The thing that's nice about it, there's 4 Bibles in it. It has the King James. Let me look here real quick and get the real names. King James, and then it goes to the modern language, the Living Bible and the Revised Standard. And they're all together. You can read all 4 Bibles,
Yeah.
which is nice. Look, anyhow, the only one of those Bibles that says, "Thou shalt surely tithe a portion of the increase from year to year," is the King James Bible. Now, for over, 300, 400 years, the King James Bible was the one everybody used. Before that was the Bishop's Bible. And it also says with the word increase. And before that was the Geneva Bible. And that also says increase. Now we have millionaire pastors, and they still want more. Yeah. And I've been to, I like to go to different churches and spend the Sunday just to see what they're talking about and whatever. I like to go to Bible studies and get some ideas. People, they ask questions, sometimes it's about a verse, but you don't want to ask about a verse because it could be anything. They need to read the whole thing, the whole chapter. In this case, when it comes to a tithe, what's interesting is that you go to a place that God has directed you to go to, and if it's too far or your tithe is too heavy or it's too far for you to carry your tithe, you can change it into money. And then when you get there, and so we would do that same thing with the raise that we got, 10% of the raise. When you get there, you're having dinner with the Lord. And then you can take the money or whatever, if you have animals, grain, whatever it is, you can use that to buy whatever you want. As a matter of fact, it says you can get whatever your heart lusts after. And I showed that to a pastor, and it was in his Bible too. Even the ones that have taken the word increase out, it still talks about what you can get. And so you spend your money or your animals. Let's say, real quick, your tithe is 3 sheep this year. You have done real well, your herd's grown well, and so you have 30 more sheep than last year. So your tithe is 3 sheep. You take them to the place where the tithe is to be, the tithe dinner, and you have fair quality sheep. But this person over here has a real nice male, a buck sheep that's real fine quality. And in order to increase the quality of your herd and maybe even, hopefully increase the herd itself, he'll take your 3 sheep for his 1. Okay? So he gets your 3 and you're happy and you get his 1. When the tithe dinner and everything is over with, you take the sheep home with you. If you brought money, you take the money home with you. Don't leave it someplace. And I tell you, in the book, I say I'm not against the tithe because you still need to keep lights on in the building. You still need a building for the weather and what have you. It's just the fact that somebody has changed so many Bibles, and they do it because of translation. And yet translation increases increase, and taking the word out is, there are a number of ways they've been changing the Bible on us. Go ahead. How's that? Do you understand?
Yeah, it's amazing. I think the part about tithing is also where it says we also accept MasterCard and Visa. No, I'm only kidding. But certainly these pastors are getting very, very rich. 10% of the congregation's income is a tremendous amount of money. And I think you're on target with your research there. And I think perhaps the pastors need to take a little bit of a vow of less greed, perhaps. I'm not sure. I won't open up that whole can of
Yeah,
worms.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, and at the same time, one of the Army National Guard, I was, like you said, a helicopter pilot,
Mhm.
and I was a standardization instructor pilot. Now, when I had been thinking over the years of my life that I know, you get a feeling that the Lord's looking over you, especially in Vietnam and some other instances in my life. And about 2010 or 2012, I decided that, I wanted to thank the Lord for doing what he's done to keep me alive.
Yeah.
And so I said, I've always heard that he would never give you something more than you could do. Well, so I went ahead and I prayed and I said, if there's anything I can do for you, just let me know. And sure enough, about 4 or 5 months later, I was thinking about something about the tithe. And there's a time, if the Lord's going to talk to you, and I know people say, oh, you heard the Lord's voice. What did it sound like? No. It kind of comes as an epiphany. It's all of a sudden there's something there, and where did that come from? But it comes between 3:20 and 3:30 in the morning. And there's a name for that, it's in the book. But you're wide awake. So I learned a long time ago, when I have something like that, I want to write down. I have to just get up and go write it down. But this time it was one of those where I got up, I went into my office, and I said, okay, what could it be? So that's when I opened up the Bible. And I know this sounds really weird for some people, but when I opened up the Bible, there it was, Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 22, knowing again that it was going to be harder than I thought it would be. Actually, it wasn't, because he gave me what he wants me to share with people. And the share the truth is what it's about. I write about creation story. I wrote about the two stories of creation. People who have really studied the Bible, and I studied like a manual more so than the Bible.
Because of his background.
Because of my background, yes. And I think the thing, because I also was a standardization, I missed that in religion, because so many people are going so many different directions that it really confuses people. And so anyhow, having seen that and it happening to me, it just pretty much told me that, this, whatever it takes, we're going to do it. So,
Were there any questions that you?
Yeah. I was just waiting for Cletus to wrap up what he was saying there. It's very, very fascinating, no doubt. And no doubt God was keeping you safe when you were serving in Vietnam. Melanie, let me talk to you a little bit about the other things in the Bible that perhaps have been misunderstood or aren't really there, or there that people haven't really opened their eyes to. What were some of the other revelations that Cletus came upon that you worked on with him in this book?
Well, there were several. The main thing was many pastors during their sermons will pick out a phrase or a psalm or something from the Bible, and a verse, and it will be out of context. And like the beginning of the book says, when you ask a question, how come you get 3 different answers? Being in my profession, I realize in contracts, things can be in the very end in Revelations, it says that thou shalt not add or subtract a word
or
anything from what is written. And he knows the Bible better than I do. Like I said, I'm more of the editor type, and I've learned from him And his story of creation, a lot of times by that, is in the beginning. It's right there in Genesis. He created man and woman. And, in verse 2, that means there were people there. And this blows people's mind about having two different stories of creation. But if you think about it, then later on, he talks about Adam and then Eve. But if they were the only people, and we always have thought in the past that those were the only two people, that was the beginning.
They were the first people.
But then if you would think about it, if their children, which they had, it would be very incestuous. As far as going down the line. And even their son was sent off to the land of Nod, and he married a wife. Well, where did she come from?
Or better yet, before Cain leaves, he says to the Lord, he says on his trip on the way, if the others find out what he did, then they will punish him. And then so that's, right away, now you've got others. So you've got it. That's not me saying these things or whatever, but then he does go to the land. He marries a woman, and he has daughters and granddaughters. Now, in order to have a granddaughter, you've got to have one of his daughters gets married, has children, a daughter, then that becomes a granddaughter. If you think about it, if Cain had relations with his daughter, the child would still be his daughter,
right?
Not a grand. So it's telling us those things. And the other part of it is in the first story of creation, you just simply read the words and think about it a little bit. I try to get a little bit of mind going, but he tells, okay, they're male and female. And he tells them, backing up a little bit, is the first thing we think of, or I'm told all along for many years, like many people, that there's only one God.
And there is only one God
for us.
Yeah.
Yes. However, I point out different things like, they told, the people that they're created in the images of these different gods, if you think about it. Here's
further,
really good.
The Muslims have their God.
The Hindus have their God. A lot of different religious groups have their gods.
Yeah.
But the part that really stops people in their tracks when they go, yeah, but there's only one real God. And I said, okay, then help me out here a little bit. Explain to me why it is in the 10 Commandments that were written by our God, by his own finger, in stone. Why is it the first commandment he comes out with is, thou shalt have no other gods? Not God, even if it's a God, that means there's another God. But thou shalt have no other gods before me.
That's been explained to me as
idols.
Gods, meaning perhaps idols, perhaps money, perhaps other things you worship.
Yeah, sure.
But if you think about
it, but it doesn't say that.
It doesn't say that.
It doesn't say, And there's no big G, no little g when it comes to gods. That's totally, this is where they're confusing. See, it's easier to fool people than it is to convince them they've been fooled.
Absolutely.
And I've talked with, people at the Bible studies and stuff, and I go, yeah, but I know what you're saying, but those words aren't in the Bible.
I've always looked at the Bible, particularly the Old Testament, as a series of stories to teach, and not something that should be interpreted verbatim. That they needed interpretation, actually, rather than just. Are you in the same page as me? That you?
Well,
I feel like the New Testament, the Scriptures, the Gospels are pretty close accountings of what happened to Jesus on earth. But the Old Testament is more like, I don't think two of every animal got on a boat. I
Oh,
believe
it's
that
not.
was a story to tell us a lesson. That's what I think, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I mean, what do you guys
and
think?
and that's a perfect example of how people think that the animals went on two by two.
Yeah.
But in the Bible, it says of the clean animals, they went on 7 pairs,
Mm,
not just two cows, male and female,
right.
but 7 male, 7 female of the clean animals, and only 2 by 2 of the unclean. So, and the whole story is set in one spot on this globe, on this planet. Uh, I mentioned in there about different people and how they're different is when it says that they were created in the image of their gods. So we have people with different skin,
Mm.
different colored eyes, different colored hair. Yeah, and that's where I was going is when that was done, who created the Aborigine? Their God created them.
And they thought the world was flat back then. So
Yeah, they had no idea where the Americans come from.
Let me ask you this, guys. What do you hope readers take away from it? Do you hope they look at the Bible a little more skeptically and use some reason when interpreting what they read? Or perhaps it's something different than that. What's your hope for readers after reading this book?
Is to know that there is a truth out there that they're not getting. They're
And
not
where would that truth be found? In the Bible or outside of the Bible?
in the Bible.
In
In
the
the
literally,
Yeah.
the 2 stories of creation, the
Yeah.
tide. One of the things I talk to people, Jesus is not his true name.
Mm.
Okay, he was given the name at birth as Yeshua
Yeah.
because the letter J wasn't invented till somewhere around 1534.
Right.
So it couldn't be Jesus. So for 1,500 years, everybody that knew him, even back when he was a child, it was Yeshua.
Right.
And our God is not God. God is not a name. God is a title, like
Like a king.
yes.
king. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, a king, chief of police, chief of
Right.
president, senator, whatever. It's a title. It's not a name. We have a name, Yahweh Elohim, and it talks about he's one of the gods that created the creation of the first chapter in Genesis, and then that's the creation of the others. Then in the second chapter, we get a hold of Adam and Eve, and then you have the lineage. The Old Testament, like you asked before, to me, is all about those things that took place for the Israelites.
Mhm.
Even Yahweh calls them his favorite. Okay, they're his favorites. And have you ever wondered why they went to Israel or that area? Because it's like from where the Garden of Eden is, it's like 1,500 miles away. It's a long hike. And, but to me, and just to me, is that the people he had placed there, that Yahweh had placed there in the very beginning, were starting to be disrespectful and going their own way, doing their own thing. So he's bringing in another group of people, the Israelites, into what we call the Israel area now. So, yeah.
May I add something that I guess what we want people to do is actually read the Bible versus believe everything the pastor says. The pastor is not a bad person. We're not saying that at all. It's just that if you need to take things and put them in context, and if you do read the Bible, the Old Testament is more historical, whereas the New Testament changes totally. And just study the Bible instead of just listening to the sermon. Go ahead and go back home and read the surrounding verses, or the surrounding Psalms, or whatever, just so you can get a good idea of the foundation from which they were talking, and a lot of times it differs.
And where do you think people should start? Right at the beginning? Should they start right at the beginning of the Bible, or is there a chapter or verse they should start at? Where do you think?
Now, it's right in the beginning. Take a good look at the differences between the first chapter and the second chapter. First chapter, the people were told to multiply and go out amongst the world and what have you. But in the second one, Adam and Eve weren't told to multiply or anything. They didn't do so until they were kicked out paradise. So, and in the first one, they have more people that, again, if you think about the gods, they're in there. So that's where you get people of different color, different hair, skin color, hair color, eye color, height, body shape, all those things. Just starts to make sense after a while. Even the Aborigines have a god. And that all took place in the very beginning, sixth day of creation. I also, if you notice that I give creation time, it's a creation day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's not an earth day. We think of everything as earth time.
24 hours.
24-hour earth. What's the time like on Mars? It's different.
Yeah.
And so that's all we think about is what's here in this little world. We think, like a lot of the people way back when, that the sun and moon revolved around our flat earth, and we didn't know. So the Bible, or I should say, religious and science went along hand in hand for many, many years. And then when they started realizing that the planet was round and there's other things, they kind of went separate ways. And it's too bad that the religious couldn't come along with the science and say, way back when, they thought it was like this, but instead it's truly like this.
Well, and there's a difference maybe between a God day. We all think he created the earth in 6 days and rested on the seventh. And who knows how long a God day is?
Oh, I do.
Oh,
yeah. I'm sorry. That's one of the things. Creation day can be millions of earth years.
Right.
A God day is considered 1,000 earth years. Okay. And a day is considered 24 hours. But even our time isn't exact. Take, for instance, the rotation. How many days are there in a year? If I asked you that, what would you say?
365.
Yeah. And that would be wrong. You go to the back of the class.
I always do. That always happens. I always get sent to the back.
Yeah, I know.
That's right. I'm starting in the back of the class. I'm in a different classroom now.
And I had all my friends back there. So it's 365 and almost a quarter of a day. Because that's why we have leap year.
Leap years, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's interesting how some people will try to protect their answer by saying, God does everything perfect. Well, sometimes it doesn't number of years, how many days are in a year. But
there any questions that you had?
Well, we are actually out of time, but you guys did a great job on this. You've really done some deep thinking, some wonderful research, and I think it's going to inspire our viewers to pick up that Bible and read it for themselves. Don't listen to what the pastor says, pick up the Bible. And a great guide to that is the book that the McMurtrys are holding right there. It's a book they have written basically together. The name of the book is That Really in the Bible? It is a bold look at scripture like you've never seen before. Melanie, Cletus, thank you both for joining us here today on GBN.
Thank you.
It was a real pleasure.
Audrey, for being out there. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely. I appreciate your wisdom and your insight and your research and the thought you've given to this wonderful project. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time. This time until next time.